You're the background music in my life," she laughed, raising her glass during a birthday toast. Everyone at the table chuckled like it was cute. I smiled too, but something in me dimmed that night. Because even though she meant it as a joke, I knew she was right, and she knew I wouldn't do anything about it. My name is Emma Cartwright. I'm 23 years old. And for most of my life, I was the invisible backbone of our family. I was the one who remembered everyone's birthdays, packed the snacks, drove the forgotten homework back to school, and smiled while standing in the background of every family photo, next to the sister who always stood center stage. Lauren, my older sister by 16 months, was the kind of child people described as born to shine. She had this spark, this magnetic charm that made teachers, neighbors, and even strangers lean in closer. From the time she could walk, she demanded attention the way other kids demanded juice boxes. And she got it, always. Growing up in our two-story suburban home on Sycamore Lane, the house looked like any other in our cookie-cutter neighborhood, but inside, everything was dictated by image. My mother, Dana, was the sort of woman who arranged fresh-cut roses for Monday mornings and ironed her bedsheets. A former ballet dancer turned real estate agent, she obsessed over presentation and perfection. My father, Rick, worked long hours as a CPA, but his attention always seemed elsewhere, like he was physically present but emotionally buffering. He wasn't unkind, just muted. Like background noise, which I suppose made sense, considering that's the role I eventually learned to play myself. Lauren bloomed under that kind of household pressure. She was an AP student, cheer captain, and the star of every family holiday. When she walked into a room, she walked like she owned it. By comparison, I felt like a shadow stitched to her heels, always close, always present, always forgettable. Even as a child, I remember choosing the smaller slice of cake without being asked. I picked the back seat. I let her wear the sparkly shoes, even when I'd picked them first. Nobody asked me to do these things, not explicitly. But praise followed Lauren like a trail of confetti, and I guess I thought maybe some of it would eventually fall on me if I stayed close enough. It didn't. Instead, I became useful. I learned early that being useful was the only way to get noticed in our family. I remembered Lauren's locker combination and snuck into the school to retrieve her history book more than once. I faked our mom's signature when Lauren forgot permission slips, covered for her when she snuck out with her friends, and kept her secrets like they were part of my own DNA. I gave up piano lessons because our parents couldn't manage both our schedules, and Lauren had recitals. I stopped asking for things. By high school, my role was cemented. Lauren dated the varsity quarterback. I drove her to and from his house when he couldn't leave because his mom was strict. I packed her snacks before cheer competitions and ironed her uniforms when she was too tired to care. Our mother would beam, "What would we do without our Emma?" But the phrase always landed more like a utility compliment than a heartfelt sentiment. No one ever said thank you. Not once. One moment that still plays in my mind like an overwound music box happened during senior year. I had been invited to interview for a scholarship at a state university, my dream school, one with a top literature program and a campus so beautiful it made your bones ache just walking through it. The interview was set for the Saturday before prom. But that morning, Lauren woke up with a swollen face. She had a sudden dental emergency, a cracked molar from biting down on some hard candy. She was crying, inconsolable. She couldn't go to prom like that. Mom turned to me, hand already on her phone, and said, "Emma, you'll have to drive her. Your interview can be rescheduled, right?" It couldn't. But I didn't say that. Instead, I drove my sister to the dentist and sat in the waiting room watching the clock inch toward the hour of my lost opportunity. I sat there in my best blouse and flats, the resume I'd spent a week printing and proofreading tucked inside my bag like a ghost of the girl who was supposed to use it. Later that evening, Lauren twirled down the staircase in a silver sequin dress with freshly fixed teeth and glittering eyes. "You saved my night," she said with a grin, hugging me briefly before running off to meet her friends. Our mother clapped her hands and told me I was such a good sister. But she never said thank you. That's the thing about being the fixer, when you're good at erasing problems, people forget they were ever there. By the time I turned 20, I was working part-time at the library and attending community college. Lauren was finishing her bachelor's degree at a private university, fully funded by our parents, despite her frequent calls home about missing assignments and roommate drama. Meanwhile, I still packed her care boxes, granola bars, fuzzy socks, new pens. One night, during her 21st birthday dinner at a downtown bistro, someone asked her what it was like being the firstborn. Lauren, half drunk on sangria, tossed her hair back and said, "Emma's always been the background music in my life. She keeps the vibe going." Everyone laughed, including our mother. I laughed too. But that night, after I drove everyone home, I sat alone in my car for almost an hour, staring at the dashboard like it held the answers I didn't even know I was looking for. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But for the first time, I felt the quiet bloom of something else. Clarity. And maybe that was even more dangerous. Because if I was just the background music, what would happen if I finally stopped playing? "You're too serious, Em," Lauren giggled one night, legs curled under her on the sectional couch I bought, but she claimed, sipping cheap red wine while ash from her clove cigarette flirted with the edge of my favorite blanket. "You carry the whole world on your back like it owes you something. Loosen up. Breathe." I had been breathing. I'd been holding my breath for years. But no one ever noticed the difference. I was 21 the year I finally moved out. At least, I told myself I was moving out. The truth was that I packed my books and my second-hand laptop into a tote bag and moved 3 bus lines away to a basement studio with pipes that moaned louder than the upstairs tenants, believing that distance was a boundary in itself. It wasn't. I was working 2 jobs then, one at the public library reshelving returns in silence, the other at a second-hand bookstore where I spent my shifts covered in dust and the scent of old pages. My classes at the community college were crammed into night sessions, which meant I lived on vending machine granola bars and lukewarm coffee, my sleep schedule tethered to exhaustion more than any clock. Still, there was a kind of sacredness to that life. It was mine. My studio wasn't glamorous, one wall was chipped brick and my kitchen was a microwave balanced on a mini fridge, but no one else's voice filled the space. The first few weeks, I would come home, drop my bag, and just stand in the middle of the room, arms outstretched, drinking in the quiet like it was honey. That was the year Lauren dropped out of St. Celeste University. She called me from a yoga retreat she'd impulsively signed up for, her voice raw from crying but somehow still self-aware enough to narrate her pain with poetic precision. "It's all performative, Emma," she whispered, as if we were sharing a secret instead of her spiraling into debt in a borrowed Airbnb. "College is just another stage. I want something real." What she meant by real, I never asked. I just listened. That same week, she landed a PR internship through one of Mom's friends, an older woman named Marcy who owned a boutique brand consultancy downtown. It was the kind of place where they used words like authenticity and organic synergy while sipping $12 smoothies, and Lauren fit right in. She never went back to school. Instead, she leaned into her natural charisma like it was a golden ticket. She told stories at networking events, laughed at the right pitches, cried strategically when things got too real. She became a success story wrapped in Instagram filters and espresso martinis. A few months later, she called again. This time, her voice was cracking, not with existential despair but with raw panic. "Em," she gasped, "I found him cheating, literally in our bed. I can't be here. I can't breathe. I think I'm going to lose it." I didn't hesitate. I packed an overnight bag, left a note for my landlord, and took the 1:13 a.m. bus across town to the apartment she shared with her now ex. She was sitting on the kitchen floor, mascara streaked down both cheeks, wearing a shirt that didn't belong to her and clutching a bottle of gin like it might teleport her somewhere softer. "I'm here," I said, and I meant it. That overnight bag became a drawer. Then a corner of the closet. Then 2 years. 2 years of unpaid bills that mysteriously landed in my name. 2 years of laundry piles I washed, dishes I scrubbed, and groceries I bought just until Lauren got her next check. 2 years of pretending it was temporary, even though we both knew it wasn't. I was back in orbit. Lauren didn't ask me to become her domestic fallback, not in words. But she didn't have to. When she came home from work ranting about office politics and brand drama, I handed her a glass of wine before she asked. When she scheduled last-minute parties, I cleaned before and after. I became the housekeeper, the unpaid therapist, the quiet companion who knew when to disappear so she could entertain. I told myself it was fine. I was helping. Family. Support. Then came Jordan. Jordan was different. I met him through a poetry workshop I was auditing at the college. He was tall, thoughtful, the kind of man who listened without interrupting and remembered small things, like how I took my coffee or that I hated mint-flavored desserts. We didn't fall in love fast or dramatically. We folded into each other slowly. He liked to sketch between poems, and once he drew me without realizing it, my silhouette bent over a book, hair pulled into a messy bun, one sock halfway off. He blushed when I noticed. I kept the sketch. I still have it. Lauren met him at a dinner party I hosted. He brought a bottle of red and a bouquet of wildflowers for me, and Lauren pulled me aside in the kitchen, her eyes glittering. "Okay, finally," she said. "You found a man with a pulse and taste. I'm impressed." I laughed, flattered. Maybe this could work. Maybe I could have this for myself. Later that night, I noticed them talking in the hallway, too close, too long, but I told myself it was nothing. Jordan was polite, and Lauren was magnetic. People always lingered around her. It wasn't until 2 weeks later, after a party that blurred into morning, that I knew the truth. I had gone to bed early that night. I was exhausted from school and my double shifts. I left the door cracked open, music still pulsing from the living room. Around 3:17 a.m., I heard laughter. His laughter. Her laugh echoing after it. The next morning, Jordan was gone. He didn't text. He didn't call. But Lauren made pancakes and didn't look at me once while she set the table. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She didn't have to. I knew. There are silences that scream louder than any confession, and that morning was a choir of them. That afternoon, I started packing. I didn't slam drawers or break plates. I folded my shirts quietly, like I was tucking in grief. I zipped up the duffel bag I had once unpacked in her closet and didn't pause when she walked into the hallway, barefoot and wearing Jordan's old hoodie. "You're seriously leaving?" she asked, eyes wide, voice thin with disbelief. I nodded. "I needed you." "I know," I said. "You always do." I carried my bag through the living room, where music still played from the speaker she never turned off. Someone spilled wine on the couch. The ashtray overflowed. The place smelled like sweat, perfume, and denial. I walked past the half-empty bottles and the group of strangers still sprawled on our furniture like they owned it. No one looked up. No one said goodbye. I closed the door behind me, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to freedom, sharp, clean, and terrifying. Outside, the air was cold. It felt like breathing. "Don't wear anything too nice," Lauren had whispered during her final dress fitting, the hem of her gown pooling around my feet like an accusation I didn't deserve. "You'll look desperate." I laughed. But it wasn't a real laugh, it was the kind of hollow reflex your body develops when it's spent too long being trained not to fight. The day the invitation arrived, it came in a velvet envelope so thick it could have doubled as body armor. The calligraphy was sharp, unnecessarily dramatic, almost cruel in its elegance, like every curve of the lettering was laughing at me. Inside, the cardstock was weighted, embossed with Lauren and Matthew's initials entwined in a gold leaf design that probably cost more than my rent. I remember standing in the doorway of my apartment, mail in one hand, a half-eaten protein bar in the other, wondering for a moment if the invite had been misaddressed. But no. There it was. To Emma Cartwright, sister of the bride. Not maid of honor. Not bridesmaid. Not even a personalized note or scribbled heart in the margins. Just sister of the bride. A technicality. I wasn't surprised, exactly. After I left Lauren's apartment that morning, after Jordan, after the quiet betrayal that didn't even come with an apology, I hadn't really expected much more than radio silence. But months passed, and then came the engagement announcement, a perfectly curated post captioned with an inside joke I didn't recognize, a ring I'd never seen, and a fiancé I'd only met once in passing during an event where Lauren had spent the whole evening reminding people I wasn't the creative sister. His name was Matthew. He was polished, understated, the kind of man who wore perfectly tailored clothes and talked about tech startups like he was selling dreams. He didn't strike me as cruel. But I'd come to learn that cruelty didn't always show up in snarls or raised fists. Sometimes, it came cloaked in politeness and silence. Lauren didn't call to tell me about the engagement. She tagged me. In a group post. Among 20 other people. Still, I told myself this was my chance to do the right thing. To show up, smile, and be the person everyone had come to rely on me being. The one who didn't make things messy. The one who held her tongue and did what needed to be done, even when every instinct screamed that I was just walking into another trap. The first wedding-related email I received came from Lauren's wedding planner, not Lauren herself. It was a color-coded schedule with labeled tasks. My name was listed under guest book management and scent coordination, a role I had to Google because I didn't understand what the hell it meant. Apparently, I was to stand near the ceremony entrance with tiny diffusers and spray a custom essential oil blend designed to evoke calm romance and nostalgic intimacy. Lauren didn't ask me. She assigned me. And when I texted her a lighthearted "Was there a mix-up?" she responded with a voice note that started with a laugh and ended with a sigh. It's not a big deal. We just wanted everyone to have a small part. You're not exactly center stage energy, you know? This suits you. This suits you. I replayed those 3 words at least 50 times. That week, I started building her wedding gift. Not a gift from a registry, those were filled with obscenely expensive appliances and designer decor she didn't need, but something real. Something that held weight. I found an old box of childhood photos in our parents' attic. Ones she hadn't seen in years, Polaroids of us in matching Easter dresses, muddy sneakers after a backyard storm, birthdays with lopsided cakes I'd helped decorate. I spent hours scanning, editing, and arranging them into a handcrafted leather-bound photo album, carefully captioning each image with inside jokes and long-forgotten memories. Every night after work, I'd sit at my kitchen table with the photos spread out like tarot cards, as if I could predict how she'd react just by aligning them right. I picked the softest paper, the most elegant font, even embossed the cover myself. On the front, I wrote, "For all the years that made us sisters." It was maybe the most vulnerable thing I'd ever made. A week before the wedding, Lauren invited me to a final dress fitting. Or, rather, she texted me an address and said, "Be there at 10. Bring safety pins." The boutique was a converted mansion downtown, with chandeliers bigger than the bedrooms I'd grown up in and mirrors that made everything look sharper, thinner, glossier. Lauren stood on a pedestal in a dress that shimmered like moonlight, surrounded by stylists who cooed like doves at her every move. She waved lazily when I entered. "Emma. You made it. Don't forget to take your shoes off, they scuff the flooring." As I crouched down to help adjust the hem, she leaned over and whispered with a smile, "Don't wear anything too nice, okay? You'll look desperate." And then she straightened, laughing at something one of the stylists said, as if she hadn't just driven a needle into my chest with surgical precision. I smiled. Because I always smiled. But when I got home, I cried. Not because she had insulted me, that wasn't new. But because some traitorous part of me had still hoped we could be something more than what we'd always been. I thought maybe the album would matter. Maybe the memories would reach her. Maybe there was still something worth saving. The night before the wedding, I sat alone in my tiny apartment. The photo album was wrapped in navy blue tissue paper, tied with twine. It sat on the table in front of me like a question I couldn't answer. I stared at it for hours. I kept thinking about Lauren as a child, about how she used to curl up beside me during thunderstorms and whisper that she was scared. About how she used to beg me to read to her even when she could already read better than I could. About how she once told me, at age 6, "You're the only person who understands me." I didn't know if that was still true. But I knew one thing: I would go tomorrow. I would stand in my assigned corner, smile at the guests, spray the stupid scent, and give her the gift I made with hands that still shook. Because I needed to know, truly know, that I had done everything I could. That whatever came next wouldn't be because I gave up. There's a kind of humiliation so sharp, so deliberate, that it doesn't even sting, it just freezes in your chest like dry ice. And in that frozen space, where most people might shatter or scream, I found something I hadn't felt in years. Control. I arrived 15 minutes early, just like the little email from the planner had advised, with a modest knee-length navy dress that I had ironed the night before and a small navy-wrapped box tucked firmly under my arm. The sun was high and merciless, baking the white stone patio of the Ridgemont Vineyards, where clusters of guests milled about sipping champagne and complimenting each other's Instagram-perfect outfits. The air smelled like lavender and citrus, Lauren's signature scent blend, no doubt chosen after multiple rounds of expensive consultations. I stood for a moment near the edge of the courtyard, watching them all, the influencers, the second cousins, the PR people from Lauren's office, all pretending they weren't taking selfies while accidentally catching the floral arrangements in the background. No one noticed me. That was fine. I was used to slipping through spaces like a rumor that never quite caught. I headed toward the check-in table, where a woman in an earpiece and a stiff, nervous smile stood beside a giant easel displaying the seating chart. The board was covered in swirling calligraphy and delicate pressed flowers, designed like a family tree of people who mattered. I scanned for my name. Emma Cartwright. Nothing. I tried E. Cartwright, Ms. Cartwright, even the scent coordinator, in case someone had decided to immortalize my utility instead of my identity. Still nothing. I turned to the woman at the table and gently explained the situation. Her eyes flicked over her clipboard, then to her tablet, and then back to the seating chart like it might magically rearrange itself under pressure. She stammered, her voice tight with apology. "I'm not sure." "But you are Lauren's sister?" I nodded, my hands tightening slightly on the gift box. "Yes. Emma. The bride's sister." "Oh. Okay." She glanced around, then leaned in and lowered her voice. "There's a backup chair we use when the seating chart gets full. I'll show you where it is. So sorry for the confusion." She led me around the side of the patio, past rows of crisp white chairs, past the floral arch, past the string quartet tuning their instruments, until we reached a narrow corner near the kitchen door. There it was. A gray foldable chair. No ribbon. No name. Positioned squarely between two overflowing trash bins and the double doors where servers bustled in and out carrying trays of half-melted appetizers and champagne flutes. "This is it?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. She nodded, clearly mortified. "Again, I'm so sorry. There's just been a lot of last-minute changes in." "It's fine." I said it automatically, because I always did. Even now. Even here. As I sat, carefully adjusting my skirt, I noticed something even more surreal. From where I was seated, I could see Lauren. She stood near the arch in her wedding gown, layered silk with a train that seemed to float behind her like smoke. She was laughing with one of her bridesmaids, but when she glanced in my direction and caught my eye, her smile twisted. She broke from the group and walked toward me, her heels crunching against the gravel path with theatrical precision. When she got close enough, she leaned down as if to fix her veil and whispered through clenched teeth, "Guess you don't count after all." Then she turned on her heel and walked away. That's when something inside me stopped moving. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness. It was stillness. I looked down at the gift in my lap, the photo album wrapped in navy tissue, tied with twine, with a tag that simply read, "For all the years that made us sisters." I picked it up, stood, and brushed imaginary dust off my dress. No one saw me leave. No one stopped me. I walked through the courtyard like a ghost already forgotten, down the gravel path, through the parking lot where the valet gave me a passing glance and nothing more. I unlocked my car, slid into the driver's seat, placed the album gently on the passenger side, and sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, waiting to feel something dramatic. But I didn't. What I felt instead was clean. A kind of cleansing that no apology, no scene, no confrontation could have provided. I had given her every opportunity to see me, to value me, to choose me. And instead, she had given me a trash can seat at her wedding. Inside the venue, time moved forward like an expensive machine. The music started. The guests stood. The ceremony began. But it didn't take long for the absence to register. I was told later, by a friend of a friend who had stayed, that Lauren's best man, a close friend of Matthew's, had walked up to her during the cocktail hour with a confused expression. "Where's Emma?" he asked, looking around. "Weren't we doing the photo series with the sisters next?" Lauren shrugged, distracted. She probably wandered off. Not a big deal. But then came the moment that cracked her composure. Someone mentioned the gift. "The one with the navy wrap," a bridesmaid said, "the one she was carrying when she walked in. What happened to it?" Lauren blinked. Then frowned. Then turned sharply toward the check-in table. But the gift was gone. I had taken it with me. And something about that shattered her. Maybe it was the finality of it. Maybe it was the realization that I wasn't just her background character anymore, I was gone. In front of 50 guests and a dozen photographers, Lauren's perfectly curated smile dissolved. She spun toward the courtyard steps and screamed my name. "Emma!" It echoed. Loud. Ugly. Panicked. She ran outside, clutching her skirt, hair unpinned from the rush, scanning the parking lot like she expected me to be waiting there to be found. But I wasn't. I had already driven away. From a distance, I watched her crumble. The wedding planner tried to pull her back inside. Guests whispered. Cameras stopped clicking. And all I felt was peace. Not vindication. Not cruelty. Just peace. Because I had finally chosen me. And she had finally learned what it felt like to be forgotten. Some people think forgiveness is an open door, a way back into the house they set on fire. But sometimes, forgiveness is just locking the door behind them and building something new from the ashes. 2 years ago, I drove away from a vineyard wedding with a navy-wrapped photo album buckled into my passenger seat like it was the only passenger I trusted. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone to debrief or dissect what had just happened. I just drove. Past the edge of the city. Past the parts of myself I no longer wanted to carry. Now, I live in a town where nobody knows my sister's name. The streets here smell like old wood and espresso, and the leaves turn a shade of amber that looks painted in the fall. It's the kind of place where people actually look you in the eye when they pass you, where neighbors leave baskets of tomatoes on your porch without expecting a thank you note. And on the corner of 5th and Linden, nestled between a florist and a record shop, sits a place called August Pages. It's mine. My bookstore cafe. The lease is under my name, the inventory picked by my hands, the counter worn smooth by the elbows of customers who've become something like family. Every shelf has a purpose. Every book, a reason. And every drink on the chalkboard menu is named after someone who believed in me when I barely believed in myself. There's a back room, small, private, quiet, where I keep things I'm not ready to forget, but no longer need to display. That's where the album lives. Wrapped in navy tissue, tied with twine. Sometimes, after a long day, I'll sit back there with the lights low and the window cracked open to let the wind inside, and I'll flip through it slowly. I see our childhood in blurred Polaroids and grainy prints. I see our mismatched dresses, our crooked grins, our scraped knees and shared secrets. And I don't feel anger. I feel distance. I feel clarity. Sometimes, that's enough. Matthew left Lauren within 10 months. I know because she tried to tell me. The first call came 3 weeks after the wedding. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. The next was a letter, sloppy, written in a familiar looping hand I hadn't seen since high school, where she begged me to understand how it all got out of hand. She said she missed me. She said the wedding didn't matter. She said I was her anchor, her true family, her only real witness to the before. I returned the envelope unopened. After that, the calls slowed. The letters dwindled. And then, silence. I never blocked her. I just never answered. Because forgiveness doesn't have to come with an invitation. It doesn't mean rebuilding the house. It can just mean walking away without dragging the rubble behind you. People ask if I'm lonely. I smile when they do. Because they don't see the way light falls through the bookstore windows in the morning, how the smell of roasted beans curls into the pages of the books, how people linger longer here than they plan to. They don't see the way I've learned to laugh without shrinking. Or the way Jordan's betrayal doesn't echo anymore. Because I don't date ghosts. I'm with someone now. His name is Micah. He's not dramatic. He doesn't send poetic texts or make grand declarations in front of strangers. He shows up. He brings dinner on days I forget to eat. He knows when to ask questions and when to just sit beside me in the silence. He's the kind of person who reads the author's note before the first chapter. Who listens more than he speaks. He's kind without needing credit. And he never once asked me to explain the unopened letters in the kitchen drawer. Last Tuesday, a customer came in, middle-aged, sun-hatted, the kind who asked for recommendations like they were asking for directions to themselves. She wandered for a while, eyes flitting across titles, then made her way to the counter where I was shelving some new arrivals. "Do you have anything about forgiveness?" she asked, fingers resting lightly on the wood like she wasn't sure she deserved an answer. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I smiled, soft but certain. "Yes," I told her, gesturing toward the second aisle. "But they're not all about letting people back in." She tilted her head, and for a moment, I saw something shift in her eyes. Recognition. Not of me. Of herself. She thanked me and drifted off, and I watched her go with a kind of calm I couldn't have imagined 2 years ago. I went back to shelving, humming softly, the scent of cinnamon and coffee curling through the air. And just as I was finishing the last book, I paused. It was a collection of essays on self-reclamation, and one quote stood out, printed in bold on the back cover: "Some people bury you with their absence. Others teach you how to rise from it." I smiled. Not because it hurt. But because I had risen. And I was never going back.